23 years old. I am the daughter of migrants. My parents are both from Mexico. My mom is from Nayarit and my dad's from Michoacan. I identify as Chicana. I grew up East Side Long Beach when I was like around 7 to like high school. We moved over to Lakewood, but I still spent most of my life basically still in Long Beach because my family's there, like my mom's like sisters. Came back now, living in LA, well in Linwood. I live with my mom, my dad, my sister, and my nephew. So there's 5 of us in that wonderful house.
San Diego, North County, super conservative. Used to live in Long Beach for like a couple years. Loved it. Super queer, super gay, not super queer where I live right now, which sucks. I guess you would have to define style in general. Like style can also be the way you speak. It can be, because it's the way you're perceived aesthetically through other people. So the way you speak is part of your aesthetic. The way you like carry yourself, yeah, your shoes, your accessories, your everything.
Like a lot of my clothes come from my grandmother. My gosh, she could dress. That woman has style. Like she had the jewelry. It wasn't like typical like, you know, black woman outfits or something like that. It was like she had variety, you know what I'm saying? And everything she wear, you know, and she still repped culture, you know what I'm saying? So it was like when I would go through her clothes now she just wear like a big old Raider t-shirt or something. When I would go through her clothes and I'd be like, damn, can I have this? She'd be like, girl, take it. And I'm like, a lot of times, a lot of the stuff I have is from her. Or even my grandpa, he'd be having some jackets, hats. And it's like, I mean, you grow up with style. You know what I'm saying? It's something you grow up with. And it doesn't come from nowhere, you know? It comes from creativity, but a lot of it comes from what you see as a child. You know, what you wear, you know, where you shop at, you know what I'm saying? Because every time you pick out an outfit, like, it means something to you. Even if you're just like, oh, I think I like that. Like, I don't watch football. But my grandma reps it. She been repping it. I'm gonna rep it. Like, every time you see a Raiders jersey, some people think, oh, my favorite player or the team. I think my grandma. You know? Like I said, you know, you grow up with style.
My name is Kirsten Ellsworth, and I am an art historian. I got my PhD in art history at Indiana University. And at our university, we were really lucky to have a collection of art from Africa in our museum and 2 professors who specialized in art from Africa. And I just kind of by accident took some of those courses, and that really created, and I would say it's going to be a lifelong interest in art from Africa.
Take 5. Growing up, my family and I were middle class. We lived in like a pretty nice neighborhood. It's like all craftsman homes, and my mom and dad are both from Mexico, so they were pretty like hetero of a couple. Like my mom cleaned all day and cooked all day because that's all she knew, and my dad worked, so I never saw him really. Like I don't think I have memories of him as a child except for like him coming home from lunch and like making my mom cry, which is pretty awful. But my mom had a very like Eurocentric way of thinking, which is pretty common in Mexico, as is colorism. And so growing up, I grew up within like Mexican culture inadvertently. The way we did things around my house was very much like you would do in Mexico, but like I said, she was super Eurocentric. She was pale and like, I think I have a picture. And pretty, she looks orange here, but that's just my lighting. And precious and super light skin. Well, that's what pale is. She was really light skinned. And I wasn't, and so it was kind of rough growing up, like thinking about it now. Psychologically, at least, like they would make fun of me for being brown, and they would make fun of me for being hairy. And this one like pretty vivid memory of my mom when I was little occasionally would scrub my knees with bleach and like a Brillo pad, because she thought that I looked dirty because I was brown. And as a kid, like I genuinely just thought I was dirty, so I was like, I don't really like this. But then growing up, I was like, wait, like I was not dirty. I mean, you know, to use bleach and a Brillo pad is kind of just like that colorism, and like internalized stuff that she was taking out on me, which is a little weird to try to process now as an adult, especially since she passed away when I was so young. So I'm like, you traumatized me, but also like romanticized her. But yeah, growing up was like that. Like, we were middle class, we were fine, and it was nothing how my life is now, where low income, and the community I live in now is, I've noticed like low income families are a lot more in touch with their like indigenous cultures and stuff like that. So I've been exposed to that more.
Spending time in Lakewood, I only had one income, my dad's income, since my mom was undocumented for up until like 2 years ago. So he's the one that had like, you know, 2 jobs. He's like a hairdresser, and then he would work like nights over like a shipping company and just like move like shipments of cargo. And so when we lived in Lakewood, I got to see how different that was from living in Long Beach. Like, I remember in Long Beach, we lived in a small little like 2 apartment complex. And it was like basically all people of color. Mostly a lot of Black and Latinx in that neighborhood. And my whole experience in Long Beach has always been very like diverse in that I've seen more people of color, like more like Samoans, Asian Pacific Islanders, Latinx, Blacks, and like talking about not just, you know, Mexican Latinos, talking about like, you know, Salvadorans, Hondurans, a few Puerto Ricans here and there. When I went to high school, I think I got used to being around a lot more white people versus what I was used to. Growing up in Long Beach, there was a lot of more people of color as my teachers. A lot more Mr. Ramirez's, you know, Mr. Vogt. I saw myself a lot more represented in my education system than most people would be able to say as a person of color. When I got to high school and I was like, okay, it's like more white people. It's interesting, and seeing how we all kind of click differently, and how even within all of our, you know, different ethnic groups, and how we were split off of academically and like our tracking. So the highest group was called like merit, and so within our little small learning community, it was composed like maybe 25% like white people, and then even then like we had majority was like Latinx and Asians. So but within our like Latinx community in Merit, like it split off in who was whitewashed and then who was more like Paisa or like Latino, or like, you know, straight up that you could see like, oh yeah, like you're from the hood. So because I spent like a good portion of my time like in Lakewood, my dad he worked in Bixby Knolls, so that's a very rich area in Long Beach. Like it's like we're the 1%, right by the Virginia Country Club. And you know, I got to meet all his clients, and they took a large role in shaping my educational future and in making sure my dad was like, hey, like make sure you get her into college, like she's really smart, like she's witty, like make sure she goes somewhere with her life. You can tell like she has like a thirst for knowledge. And my sister did too, but my sister experiences like shaped her life in a different way, where she spent more time in Long Beach. She continued middle school in the East Side. I was already put in the Gompers, which is one of the schools in Lakewood, and it's a K-through. That's a very interesting elementary school, because they turned into a middle school like maybe like 2 years after I got there. And so they bused kids from like Long Beach into Lakewood. So I think because of that, like for those good like still early years, I still was around like a lot more people of color than I would have been if they hadn't done that. So I still got to get used to like being around people and like, you know, speaking Spanglish. And
I want to say that people, when they first see me, they're just like, oh yeah, I think she's either white, or like I get Italian, Greek a lot. Like when people perceive me as white, I can feel that energy of like, you're like one of us, and like they start like saying certain things, and I'm like, what? Like wearing 2 necklaces that say God in Arabic. I actually had one instance where I think it was like a little kickback thing. There's just like a bunch of white guys, and like something in the news was brought up about the hijab, but they were talking about like Muslims like they were barbaric. I didn't want to say I was Muslim in that moment. Like it wasn't like, oh, we hate Muslims or whatever. Like you don't really have to say that to make me feel uncomfortable. But they were just like, I can't believe they make girls wear that. Like, I don't know, all these things. Like, don't even respect women kind of thing. And I'm just like, they don't really know the culture. I spoke up and I was like, by the way, little heads up, I am Muslim. So. And they were just like, what? You don't even look Muslim. And I was like, what is that? Now, I think that people with turbans are Muslim. Like, everyone thought someone in a turban was Muslim. They are not Muslim. It's like Sikh religion, which is really separate from Middle Eastern culture. You know, they were like, you don't look Muslim. I was like, what does that mean? They're like, why aren't you wearing a hijab? And I was like, well, not all Muslim girls wear hijabs. You don't have to wear a hijab, actually. Yeah, first off, there's no look, and people are super uneducated with what Muslim means, with what Middle Eastern looks like.
To me, style is my self-expression. Right now I look really boring and I'm just wearing a black t-shirt because I went to school today, but style is a reflection of who I am, and even less deep than that, I like to look nice and I like to feel nice, and that's super important to me because when you feel nice and you look nice, that also does things for you mentally and emotionally, where people are pretty quick to shake that off because, you know, girls are seen as vain and like everyone is super misogynistic. So like if you think you look cute, you're like, ugh, this chick is stupid because she's like all dressed up for school. But like, no, you know, no correlation. And also I think there's a lot of power personally when I'm wearing all pink and like a frilly dress and I start going off about something and everybody's caught off guard because, like I said, they don't expect anything from me. So style is super empowering to me. Clothing is really empowering to me because that's something I can control in my life when some other things I can't. And it's a nice distraction also sometimes. Where's my kitten going? It's a nice distraction sometimes when things are tough to like make yourself feel nice. And things are tough when you're brown and poor and a girl. So style is a part of my identity.
And then it wasn't until I got to my older years, like middle school, when I was there, like, oh, what are you like a coconut? And I was like, what is that? What is a coconut? What is that? Like, well, yeah, you're not really Mexican. Like, you don't sound like you have an accent. I'm like, well, no shit, Sherlock. Like, I was born here in the States. Like, I know my parents weren't, but like, that doesn't mean I have to have an accent. Like, and even then, like growing up, like speaking Spanish wasn't my first language. A lot of people think it is. Parents tried teaching me as a kid, but when I was younger, I didn't like the way that Spanish sounded from my dad, because when he spoke, he's just like louder man. So whenever he would speak, it sounded not harsh, but it was just like he only used. I remember hearing Spanish instances where like people were in trouble, like, or like something bad happened. So like I would relate like Spanish as to being spoken to like, you know, condescendingly. So I'd be like, no, I don't want to speak Spanish. Like I don't want to. Like it just sounds harsh when it comes from you. And then the time that I was growing up, my mom was taking English classes. So how's she gonna work on her English if she speaks to me in Spanish? Like, I can understand if someone speaks it to me. Speaking it back is a whole different story though. I mean, like I always had issues like with vocabulary and everything. Even now as an adult, like I still like, no, I don't know Spanish that well, even though like I have a whole ass minor in it to try to make up for that, like the deficit of like, oh, I didn't know Spanish as a kid, so like let me like minor so I can be like, you know what, yeah, I know Spanish. And even then learning now, it's like the Spanish that I know is academic Spanish. It's not the Spanish that like my grandparents know or that like my family in Mexico know. So it's as a result, I kind of like picked up like in college like Spanish from my friends. So I like to say my Spanish is not just Mexican Spanish, like it's Salvadoran Spanish and it's Caribbean Spanish because all my professors were from the Caribbean. The Spanish that I should have grown up with, like I know it, but do I practice it? Not really. And even then, like my mom's like, why are you saying it like that? Like that's not good Spanish. And I'm like, but the Spanish that Mexican speaks. She's like, not necessarily. She's like, every region differs. She's like, let me tell you, like your grandma would not say those kind of words. And I think language played a very large role in my whole identity being like, when someone's like, oh yeah, you're a coconut, you're brown on the outside, but white on the inside. And I'm just, I know I'm Mexican, but I guess I'm not Mexican enough to your standards. So I had a very hard relationship with that, like really hard.
Because my parents immigrated from Lebanon, their generation in Lebanon was, I would say, it was really hectic, only because there was like a war going on while they were growing up. Just like the basis, culture surrounded survival, but it also surrounded entertainment. So it's like, entertain yourself the way you can. And apparently, so the apartments are really close in Lebanon. There's like mostly apartments. They're so close that he could like jump from roof to roof, like collected like bullet shells and like missiles and stuff. So it was like very reckless. Like the culture was like that. A lot of the boys were like that. And then survival was another one, just like making sure your family's protected, having that in mind. So a lot of their upbringing is used in my upbringing. So the way my mom protects the house with like, she gets pieces of wood and puts them in the window, and like there's a lot of paranoia with protection. And then my dad was like, he was very paranoid about protection and like where we could play, but when we did play, we played hard.
Yeah.
And like was really, he found it really important to experience play in different ways. Obviously he wasn't saying it like this, like me analyzing it years after childhood, I'm like, oh, this is what he was doing.
Yeah.
Play with like the little animals in your backyard, play with the lizards, play with the insects, like hold spiders, they're not scary. It was like survival, protection, and like experience and entertain yourself. Like that was really big things that I remember they would talk about they took from Lebanon and now incorporate it into our lives. And I'm so thankful for it. I like it. I like because when I'm with my friends, I'm more of like the reckless one that's like, let's experience things, even if it's a little scary.
Yeah.
Yeah, and they're just like, you're crazy. I'm like, a little bit. Compared to your culture, a little bit, but it's fun. And it originally came to North County because my uncle had a business like in America already. I don't know why he chose that though. Yeah, why they chose that area. It's like there's a marine base literally in our city. So me and my sisters, we like kind of have this joke because there's a marine base next to us. There's like a lot of bomb tests, so we actually hear a lot of bombs. Marine base is right there. I'm used to it. I'm very used to it. Like those like booms are really like normal. We're like, oh, Camp Pendleton, like that's just the marine. We have this joke where, because we would question like my dad and stuff, like, why did you guys come here? And we're like, because they missed the bombs from Lebanon. They wanted to like have something that reminded them of home.
I like.
Yeah, like this reminds you of home. My uncle had a business here, and so they came with my uncle. Like my dad went with my uncle, and then he built a business, and that's how like my mom came. And so
They knew each other already there.
yeah, in Lebanon. Yeah, and they wanted like a better life than Lebanon because, like I said, it was so hectic at the time. There was so much war, and there still is a lot of war. So at the time, I think my dad did this like little deal with this woman and like married her, like legally married, I guess, and then got citizenship from her.
Here?
Yeah.
Ooh, okay.
I think that's how he did it.
That happens a lot in Mexican culture.
Yeah, but
like
they were doing it on purpose. Is that a thing?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like someone's cousin.
No.
Will you marry my? And it's usually like you guys get married, like we'll pay you, and then you guys.
Americans would knowingly like reach out and be like, hey, like if you pay me this much or whatever. And like we were fortunate enough, like, so my dad, his background in Lebanon, like he had a lot of money. My mom, really poor, which wasn't common to like have that dynamic. That's usually like two rich people with two poor people or something. But he was really like well off, and then my mom was not so well off. And so when he came here, he was like, I will offer you a lot of money just to marry me.
Aww.
And she was like one of those people.
That's a lot of trust too, to be like.
Oh, I know.
To your partner to be like, okay, yeah, they're gonna marry somebody else.
I know, that's crazy.
Be like,
I didn't even think of that. Yeah, I think
that's so much trust.
I think she understood it because of that idea of survival.
Yeah.
You know, like she was like, okay, yeah. So,
And you know, when you were talking about the locking the door stuff, that's probably so subconscious at this point. Like, it doesn't even feel like paranoia. It just feels like, oh
no,
yeah,
no,
like,
it's normal.
Like,
Oh, it's
just
completely
what I
normal
do.
to her. Yeah, I thought it was normal too when I was younger. Until I grew up and I was like, I'm going to people's houses and like, honestly, some people leave their door unlocked. And I'm like, that's also a privilege. Yeah. I mean, yeah, Downey, Norwalk, those aren't like safer areas. Yeah.
even with we've had our house broken into plenty of times.
Seriously?
Mhm.
Oh my god.
One time they stole our printer too. Like,
What?
ooh.
Is that a cemetery? Whoa, what the heck?
Ooh.
Yeah, speaking of class.
So growing up, I hated being Mexican. I hated being brown. I went to a middle school that was like predominantly white. And so I felt really gross there. I didn't look like the other Hannahs and Beckys. And, like I had really hairy arms, and I ate different food. So my culture I tried to ignore, and it was self-hate, obviously, but I think as I've grown older, and like I was mentioning, low-income neighborhoods and these communities, I feel like, and then I wouldn't even call them barrios because it's not a barrio, but like, you know, where you have just like a bunch of different cultures living in a block. I feel like I've been more appreciative now of our culture, and so recently, maybe like the past like 7-8 years, learning to accept myself also has come with really appreciating my culture, and now it is starting to shape my style because I'm not ashamed of these things anymore like I was when I was like a preteen, how I had been taught to hate them. Religion, not so much. I was religious growing up. I mean, it's still around my house, like in my living room. There's a Jesus like the size of this guy right here. But I kind of separated myself from that because I feel like, in my family at least, is an excuse for a lot of shitty behavior. But yeah, I mean, now my culture and my community is something that I'm proud of and that I feel like is definitely starting to like work its way into my style.
Culturally, we are Mexican. You know, culturally, I am Catholic. Do I identify as a Catholic? Am I religious as that? No. I actually identify as a recovering Catholic because Catholicism traumatized me a lot, and the way like does my body and myself and my own being who I am, and not being apologetic about my own beliefs, my political beliefs, and who should love who and all that. But being able to label myself as a Chicana, I found a way that's like, hey, like I am not from Mexico, but when I think about my experience in the States, I'm not really accepted here as a daughter of an immigrant, as a person of color, as a woman, and being able to identify myself as that kind of gave me the kind of agency, like, you know what, like I know who I am, and even now I kind of, there's a whole debate between being called like Chicanx with an X at the beginning or losing a CH, and besides that, like I identify as a Chicana with a CH because with an X is more towards people who have ties to the indigenous community, who are indigenous, and for me, and that's a very political word, and it's like I know I can't claim that because I know I'm not indigenous. Like, yeah, like my great grandparents are, but they don't. My grandma doesn't speak Cora. She's technically from Nairi. Our family indigenous group there is Cora. So while like my great grandparents, you know, spoke the language that got lost. You know, those indigenous practices got lost, except for, you know, parts of Catholicism where we kind of celebrate the Virgin Mary instead of like, you know, really praising like Jesus Christ and the Holy Spirit, because it's like it's a whole different segue of it. You know, how Spaniards wanted us to practice it versus how we made it our own. It's kind of another way that even in Catholicism, there's kind of like this interesting mix where it's like we have these, you know, icons like the saints, and sometimes we pray more to the saints than we actually do to, you know, God and the Holy Trinity, because it's just not. It's them, but do I really believe that, you know, a higher being is really a man? No, I don't. I just something about divine feminine energy where I'm like, yeah, the divine energy cannot be masculine. I refuse. So that's, yeah, I have a lot. Humanity shaped me like a lot of ways, like being a Chicana, being recovering Catholic.
They used to make fun of me, like, even my own people would make fun of me. I was like, I'm supposed to be on the same fucking team, like, don't do that shit to me. I think they would make fun of me for my hair, or they were more blatant about, like, my weight than someone would be now. They take pictures of me or something and put it online about, like, my hair or something, and when I was in high school, like, it would take a lot for me, starting high school and middle school, because I didn't really have a lot of friends during that period. It would take a lot for me to wear my natural hair. At some point, I was around people who always had their hair straightened, or who had different textures than me. Like, very socially acceptable, beautiful textures. So I would finally, like, wear my hair, I'd brush it up, I'd put it in a little poofy, and I was feeling good. I get to school, and I remember checking my Snapchat, and I was like, wait a minute, like that's me. I was like, that's me. I was like, okay. I was like, wait a minute, like I screenshotted it, and I just remember being like, the whole day my mood was off. My friend reposted it, laughing at it, like one of the few friends I had, and the person who posted it, I didn't even talk to. Like, I wasn't a mean kid. I was quiet. I would come in class, I would sit down, and I'd do what I had to do. And it was like, dang, you can't even mind your own business when you're being yourself and it'd be okay. It took a long time after that for me to feel okay about wearing my natural hair. Even in like individuals and braids, dreads or something, you know, when you have twists as a black person, and because braids and stuff, they stay in your hair for a while. It's a protective style, you know, you don't take it out the next day. But to the white kid or to someone on Snapchat, it looks dirty, or that shit looks old or something, until you look on Instagram a couple years later and you see it and you're like, okay. When I had those cornrows in, I looked like a hood rat, you know what I'm saying? I'll never forget that. I was like, dang. I had someone in my family whose hair is straight like 24/7, never ever wears a natural. And I remember her having her hair natural, and I was like, let's take a picture. And she was like, no, like, stop, like, I'm not leaving, stop. Like, she was getting so mad. And I was like, why don't you ever wear your hair natural, you know? Like, that's ruining your hair, you know what I'm saying? Your hair, you know, it's nice to have it straight every once in a while, but your hair wasn't made to be straightened. And it's like, I'm like, come on, like, that's, the thing is, like, when you feel the need to straighten your hair every day, because at times, when I was younger, I felt the need to slick my shit back. Like, I was like, grease, like, I wasn't leaving the house without a handful of grease. Until, like, I was like, my hair wasn't made to be like this. It's okay to do this, but sometimes it gets tiring, and you don't, like, that's something that's installed in you as a young age, you know what I'm saying? Like, you're taught that your hair needs to look like this, it needs to be slicked back, or you don't look good, and people will make fun of you. You can't go out in public like that, because the white folk will stare at you, and you'll be made the clown, wherever you're at. Like, they don't ask either. When I had my big old poof, they just come up like, so, when I was younger, I was like, until I learned, can I touch her? I used to get that all the time. Like, it's more of an attention thing, like, ooh, what is this? You know what I'm saying? It's like when you see, like, as a black woman, when you see a white woman with dreads, you're not gonna treat her like, you're not gonna treat them badly or anything. You're not gonna treat them differently, but you always notice. That's like one of the first things you notice when you see a white person with dreads. You're like, this white person has dreads. I'm not gonna say anything because it's their life, but I do think it looks stupid. I'm like, it looks a little, do your thing. But I know where it's supposed to be, you know what I'm saying? I'm like, I remember like perming my head, and then after that perm, I shaved my head off, and I was like, I will never do that to my hair again, because I know that this is one of a kind. I will never hurt my hair like that again. You know what I'm saying? Because they can walk out in dreads, and they can feel okay if they can walk out. If other people can walk out with straight hair, you know, who's to say, like, I can't walk out in with my afro, you know what I'm saying? Because that's very much installed. It was installed in my head that my hair wasn't okay. But you really have to take a step and say, like, this is my culture, this is my hair, you know, and Rachel, those all can have it. But it ain't gonna taste the same. You can take the recipe, but the sauce ain't gonna taste the same. Different type of relationship with your hair after you've treated it badly, you know, and then you learn to love it.
Even if you start full force loving yourself or loving your hair in that sense, you can't take back all the like trauma. 'Cause that's what it is, really.
It is.
Self-abuse truly is what it is.
You believe those things after a while.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you know yourself better than anyone. If you're telling yourself these bad things, of course you're gonna believe it. You got hurt from it and everything. And that's one thing you'll never understand. And if you could never understand that, why would you want to pose like that, you know? If you could never understand where that came from, if you don't understand the significance of how that makes someone feel, then why would you even want to wear it? You know what I'm saying? You'll never understand where that came. Like, it's weird. Like, you can read all about it. You know what I'm saying? You can learn all about it, but you'll never understand how it feels to wear that. You know what I'm saying? It's not the same. A white person having this on and me having it on. It's just not the same because it looks different. You know what I'm saying? We get treated different. If I was walking down the street in a certain outfit and a white person or whatever race is walking down the street in the same outfit, we're not gonna get the same look. I mean by you will never understand. And if you can't understand, why would you want to portray it, you know? And that's how you know it's not who they are, it's a look.
One of the elements of, let's say, body modification or how you style yourself is, of course, how you style your hair. And in the history of ancient Africa, there are many known hairstyles that we can see in sculptural form, even if we know what the hairstyle looked like based on the sculpture and the way the hair is treated. We also have photographs, once the camera comes around, of popular hairstyles. And Central Africa, if we can move into Central Africa for a moment, presents an interesting case of the Pende hairstyles from earlier times. The Pende of Central Africa are colonized by the Belgians. And when the Belgians arrive, the Belgians see a hairstyle that frightens them. And this is a hairstyle with beads and braids. And when the person shakes his or her head, this makes noise. And the missionaries and the colonizers really felt that that was a threat. Somehow that there was a protest going on against them with the hairstyle, and they banned the hairstyle. So people were forced to change it. And this situation of fear of a hairstyle is not unique to Central Africa during this period. Native Americans in the United States were often forced to cut off braids to make them look more Euro or Western. But there was also, I think, an underlying tone that the way a person dresses hair might be a code for revolution or rebellion. So the Pende hairstyle underwent that threat, and eventually, you know, the colonizers left, and the hairstyle is still understood to be part of a long history and has a lot of significance with regard to retaining one's identity even after colonization. And that's just one case I can think of right now about hair, identity, and politics.
I got made fun of for being hairy. And not too long ago, I saw some white girl on Instagram, super thin, blonde, blue eyes, and she had a unibrow. And everyone was like, oh my god, thick brows, queen, wow. And I'm like, hey, weren't you guys making fun of me in middle school, like, for this exact same thing? But okay, go off, do you.
Even now, like moving from Long Beach to Lakewood to back to Long Beach and then now to LA, like understanding those dimensions of where I live in a, not really, it's like the border of Compton, Watts, and Linwood. And I live right smack in the middle, where one block away, I am back in the hood where I hear gunshots like when I was a kid, like go to sleep to freaking helicopters. And when I go one block over, it's like, oh, look at the gentrification, look at the nice new buildings, look at, you know, there's homelessness right across the street, but, you know, we had to push them out so we can make room for these nice new buildings, this nice new library, this nice new whatever the heck they sort of want to put to market, you know, Linwood, Willowbrook as this upcoming neighborhood in order to attract, you know, less people of color and more white people, so that way the real estate properties can go up so the city can make more money and tax more people, which is sad. And then you look at the school district and it's like every other week I can hear from my house the lockdown bell 2 blocks away. And like my sister commutes my nephew to school every single day. She still takes him to school over in Lakewood because she would rather know that she has my nephew in a school that she knows that district, she grew up in it, she knows how students can get out of it and do well, versus being in LA where it's like, unfortunately, every so often there is a teacher strike because teachers aren't getting the pay that they deserve. Every so often there is a lockdown because we were afraid there are shooters on campus, even though, you know, shootings can happen any day, any place, unfortunately. But unfortunately, when you are in lower income communities, if there is a car chase nearby, if there is an animal, if there is someone at risk that they might think is going to shoot the neighborhood up, they're going to lock down immediately, unfortunately. And so out of her worry for his education, she'd rather put him somewhere she knows he's going to be okay at somewhat than somewhere where she would have to take a gamble. So yeah, that's definitely how my community shaped me and how I live and survive and how I try to speak about things.
We grew up pretty religious, like God was spoken about, but not like in a bad way. I would say it was just like God's always watching, you know, like I appreciate how my mom personally taught me about God. I'm gonna say Allah. How she taught me about Allah is like, he isn't there to like judge you when you're doing things. He's just watching. So, but it is your duty to know what you're doing is right or wrong. Like, she would tell me it that way.
It shows the trust.
Oh yeah.
Because she's like, look, he's watching.
Mm-hmm.
Make the decisions that you would want him to see. You
Yeah,
know?
it builds your character without you knowing.
Yeah, you'll make better decisions.
Genuine people. And so the things we do in secret, we like to incorporate into like day-to-day life.
I always have this underlying fear that everybody can read my mind.
Oh my God. Like what I'm thinking
so
right
I'm
now.
like, think good thoughts.
Dude, I completely understand you. When I was younger, I would like, oh my God, sometimes I would like get mad and my mom would just like use God in a way, and I'm like, in my head, like basically like fuck God. But
Do you ever say, I'm sorry, I'm sorry, I'm
yeah,
sorry,
yeah,
I'm sorry.
yeah, but in
Even
your
if-
head, yeah.
You're like,
yeah.
but you know I didn't
Yeah,
do that.
you know I didn't do that. Yeah. Or my mom would annoy me or something, and I'd be like, oh my God, I hate my mom. And I'd be like, if you can listen right now, like what? So she used religion that way. But then as I started getting like a little older, like maybe 7-ish, we started incorporating more like celebrating Ramadan, praying 5 times a day, all that stuff. I always never ate pork. She's always like tried to teach me like verses in the Quran. Even little things that I say now. Things like before you leave the house, you say Tawakkalna ala Allah, which is like have faith in God. Like when you leave, have faith in God so that you don't die, basically.
Yeah, there's something like that in Spanish too. Vaya con Dios. It's like
Really?
go with God, kind of.
Yeah,
like,
yeah. It's
like
just,
you're leaving, take God with you.
Mm-hmm. And like, or inshallah, which is if God willing. So whenever I'm making plans with people, and we're like, oh, we should meet up at this time. In my head, I'm like, oh, I always say like inshallah, like if God willing, like if it happens, like I wouldn't say that religion ran our lives. We didn't go to like mosque all the time. We didn't pray all the time, but we did try to like pray as much as we could. My parents did pray, but we always didn't eat pork. We always like prayed before we ate and stuff like that. For being Muslim, that's not very Muslim. So Lebanon is more of like the liberal country out of the Middle East. It is like pretty modern too. And so because I'm Lebanese and Muslim, it's like both of those affect how we use religion, use culture. Yeah. So it's like they're intertwined but loosely. I've always been so proud to be Lebanese. Oh my gosh, we have so much fucking pride. I don't know how, there's like, my friend told me Salvadorians are like that. Like very, very prideful in being Salvadorian.
There's a lot. I'm Puerto Rican.
Okay.
Puerto Ricans go hard for themselves.
Yeah. Like we go hard for ourselves.
Yeah.
A little
And
bit.
like I feel like Mexican in the right like
The space.
yeah, if you're in
Yeah.
the right space for it, but like you get excited, you get hyped, and then
Yeah.
too, honestly, when it's a little bit more obscure, it is so like full of hype. Like growing up here,
Uh-huh.
being Puerto Rican, I've maybe here in Southern California only met maybe like 2 or 3
Oh really?
people that are Puerto Rican.
Oh dang.
But when I went to New York, yeah, everywhere you look, somebody's Puerto Rican.
Doesn't that
like,
feel good?
yeah.
Doesn't that feel so good? Oh my gosh.
And that, because everybody here is majority, it's Mexican.
Uh-huh.
But I am also Mexican. Exciting to be around people that aren't excited by who you are. They
Yeah,
just, like, get
this is
who you
normal.
are.
Oh, it's like excitement of like relation almost. Like that little, it's like a little spark. Like, ooh, you're Puerto Rican too, or whatever. Or, like
Yeah.
you're Lebanese too. Like it's so exciting in that sense. It is a different feeling. You meet another Puerto Rican person because it's not very common here. I feel the same way because there's not a Lebanese people around. And so when I find that group of people. Like, I don't know how to express that joy with anyone else, like in my friend group or stuff. Like, who do I express this to? How can I tell you how this feels? Because I have a really close Lebanese friend. He is always in Lebanon, so he's always connected to like Lebanon in some way. So whenever I tell him like, oh, I met some Lebanese people, he gets excited, but I don't think it's like the same. Like, he doesn't understand it the same. He's like, oh, that's cool. I'm just like, yeah, it's super cool. Like, it feels like family when you're there. Like, it's so cool to just feel comfortable and like whatever you say, they kind of understand.
My dad was definitely butthurt about it when I left, and I was like, yeah, I'm gonna go to UCSB. Like, that's 2 hours away. Why don't you want to go to school nearby? And I was like, well, why? Like, the schools nearby here, they're good, but isn't going to UC like what we want. It's like, I'm the first in my family to go to college. Like, you would want me to go to a good school. You would want me to go somewhere that, you know, I'm gonna challenge myself and really grow. Like, if I stay here, it's like, yeah, I'll commute, but it's like I'm around the same people, the same mindsets, and I don't want to do that. Like, I want to expand, and that's when, for a while, I kind of got hit with this, like, well, what am I? Like, what? Like, I'm Latina, and I left early to my summer program. This thing called Freshman Summer Start Program, and they had one that called STEP. And I didn't know at the time, but like STEP was actually more geared towards like lower income first generation kids to go into, and I didn't know if I was like, oh, FSSP starts right away, let me go to that one, which I regretted it because out of the 60 students there, 50 of them were white. 5 of us were Latino. 2 of them were black, and the last ones were Asian. I had 5 people that somewhat looked like me. Like, not everyone came from lower income. That's where I got introduced to the idea of, oh, there are middle-class Latinx, there are middle-class like black people. Like, what? Like, we don't all, like, live in lower incomes? Like, whoa, what is this? Like, you know, understanding, like, different types of, like, capital and socioeconomic status and all these other big words I didn't know what the fuck they are. And now I use them, I'm like, does it make sense in the community? Like, no. So it's like, yo, like, having to understand, like, even once I left and came back that first time, it was like, I was a different person because I was introduced to all these other experiences within that like month and a half program that showed me like not only is that kind of culture shock a lot harder than it was in high school when I was like, okay, that's all white people, okay, cool, but now it's like, no, finding out that when I got to that university, over 70% of people there are white. When I came from a neighborhood that was majority people of color, and that was huge. That was like a big shocker to me, and I learned a lot more about like how racism is so prevalent in every way of society, every way that we live, you know, in school systems, in work, in just the way I walk down the street, or I decide to drive my car and get pulled over even though it's my car and I just bought it, but some cop is like, you can't own this 2016 Camry. No, what are you doing here? What are you doing in this area? And it's like, dude, I live here. I live in this area. Like, I just got this car. Like, are you sure you bought it? Are you sure you didn't steal it? And it's like, pretty sure I have my registration in my name, car's in my name, made the payments, and it's learning how to deal with those microaggressions and having a word for it finally. Like that was a thing where it's in ways like I gained these language and learning what a Chicana was. Like when I identify as a Chicana, I get to reclaim parts of myself that I didn't have a language for.
Mexican culture is like super appropriated. I have definitely seen a lot of big fast fashion companies and also like one-off like Etsy shops have definitely profited off of like traditional Mexican clothing, which is appropriation because they're profiting off of clothing that indigenous people in Mexico are making and they're not even getting paid for it. I've also been seeing a lot of subcultures within like Mexican and Chicano cultures, like Cholix cultures, or you know, just street fashion of like cholos in the 90s have been super appropriated lately. I've seen a lot of people on Instagram, and it's usually like white passing Latinx people who have started wearing hoops or like lining their lips black or you know, now it's cool when Mexican people have been demonized and criminalized historically for doing things like that. Even as far back as like the Zoot Suit riots, like Mexican people were being criminalized for dressing like that, and now it definitely is being appropriated. And I think there are a lot of parts of Mexican culture that are misunderstood. Like El Dia de los Muertos is a perfect example of how that's misunderstood, and it's been misunderstood since colonization. So the end result we have now is like this much of what the holiday actually was. But the biggest misunderstanding about that is that it's a holiday, or Halloween, Mexican Halloween, which isn't true at all. And another thing that really bothers me about that is people doing the face painting, which is not that big a deal, but that's not what it's about. It's an indigenous holiday and it's been celebrated for centuries, and it's about respecting the dead and appreciating that they lived, and you know, whatever it means to you. And I think that one's super misunderstood, which can have religious connotations, but I think that's subjective. It depends on the person also.
Hijab, that sometimes is appropriated, and it's not like the exact same wrap or anything, but like people at my school when I was in high school, like wearing just like a loose scarf on their head, trying to look more exotic, and like they're obviously like white, and I'm just like, that's gross. Yeah, like stop. You don't even know anything about Islam. You barely even talk to me about it, like, and we're like friends. People getting Arabic tattooed on them all the time. People wearing Arabic all the time, not even knowing what it, like, what the each letter even is. That just makes me uncomfortable that you have something that my people use every day, and it's super important to how we communicate. They're like always saying like kha this and kha that, and the only time you hear Arabic is when someone's blowing up in a movie and they're saying Allahu Akbar and like and emphasizing certain consonants and vowels, and I was like, ugh, it bothers me so much. And so yeah, it's seen as a very negative thing, and then, oh, but tattoos are cute, the language looks really pretty. When it's not spoken, it's really nice to look at. It's not a fashion statement. Like, I don't like that. I think it would be really cool if someone went to a Middle Eastern country, had a Middle Eastern friend, was really connected to them, sort of experience that was really, like, I don't know, important to them and they valued. Or, I don't know, if, like, my best friend wanted my name on their body. I think that would be so much more, like, understandable. But when you just put shit like little sayings, like, sometimes it's a little, like, phrase, but in Arabic, and it doesn't make sense in the actual language. I'm like, you did just put Google Translate, and I know you just did. Each letter has 4 different versions of it. When it's put in the beginning of the word, in the middle of the word, at the end of the word, and by itself is that. So I have to like sit down and look at it. It was technically my first language, but I guess I learned them both at the same time. My brother and older sister, for sure, like Arabic was for sure their first language, because like my mom didn't know any. I don't know. The Arabic thing like pisses me off one of the most though. Like the Arabic tattoos, and or like some people have like Arabic necklaces, like their name in Arabic. It's just gross to me. Henna is like technically Southeast Asian, but it's still used in a lot of like some Middle Eastern practices. Like some Palestinians use it for like marriage or coming of age, and like when people are just like going to festivals with it on them. Or I saw this ad on Instagram of like, they were literally called temporary tattoos for 6 weeks, and I'm like, that's a henna.
I think it's important when thinking about, well, that we should think about where certain textiles and clothing and objects come from in Africa. And even to be more specific, you might say, oh, that jacket has a tribal look. But what do you really mean by that? Because there are many tribes across the world, the early European tribes from Africa, tribes from all the continents. So I think if a person studies African art, just even on a little level, or just touches the surface, it becomes really fascinating to know that certain patterns are the creation of certain groups, and the ways of wearing clothing. All of that is has a long history, and even it changes because history always changes. But there are sometimes in something you might purchase in the store, like a placemat or table runner, there's this long history of a certain cultural groups' use of that object. I think there's a trend to use some of the textiles, such as kente cloth, in high fashion. And I see a couple different results. Of course, there's more exposure to whatever that textile is. That would be the positive. On the negative side, if the artisans who made the textiles are not paid or even named, or if the cultural group is not even included in the description of like a couture dress that happens to be kente cloth, I think we're going backwards in a way in terms of understanding the references that come from, let's say, West African textiles in contemporary clothing, and then we're in the realm of appropriating or even stealing a concept, an idea, a practice, and giving no credit nor any context for why that couture dress looks the way it does and what kind of material is involved in making that dress.
I'm very conscious of what I wear and what I represent because of how the things that I wear represent things that exist in the world, you know. And like Forever 21, they have these the woven shirts, right? The ones with the indigenous writing. So I have a dress that my grandma got for me from Nayeli. I have it. I don't wear it though. One, because it doesn't fit, and two, because it's not my culture. It's an indigenous Mexican culture, and I am not indigenous. I am what my dad calls a mestiza. I am a mix. I am a mix of indigenous and Spanish blood. But I am not gonna claim someone's struggle that I know nothing about. I have not experienced myself. So that's beautiful. If I'm gonna buy one of those things, I'm gonna buy it straight from someone on the streets of the peak, hand woven. Then I know my money is going back to them that they can use to support their family. I'm not gonna support some big old corporation that is just profiting off of these women's designs. They're probably not even getting compensated for them. So, Urban Outfitters, it was these rose gold huaraches. And mind you, so I went to Nairi, to my mom's homeland for the first time ever, a year and a half ago after she got her residency. And so I met my grandma, and then one of my cousins, her name is Lindsay, she got these rose gold huaraches, but they're the ones, you can see the tire in the bottom. So, you know, they're the authentic, real huaraches. So when, I think 6 months later, when I came back, when I was back in the States, shopping around at Urban Outfitters, and I saw the same rose gold huaraches, and I was like, how? And you wanna know how much those cost? They were $120 for the huaraches I got in Mexico. They were maybe like, in the US amount, maybe $5. They were the rose gold ones, but they were just some regular, like, hand woven. You know, it's still the artistry in there. They're still handmade. They're still same materials. But at least I know my money went to someone that actually made them, and they're gonna give it back to their community, take care of themselves, their family, whatever they gotta pay, versus a company that is literally profiting off of these marginalized communities. Like, and you can tell you, like, even like the shoes themselves, they all tell a story. Like, they're all different in essence. Like, there are some colors that represent some different indigenous communities. There are other styles that are like woven. Some of them were like made more fancy for like more aristocratic people back in the day. So like all these type of styles like have a story. They all have a purpose, right? So you're telling me these basic rose gold huaraches for $120. Like, going back thinking about it, like these shoes that they shouldn't cost that much. And unfortunately, like, you get people who like just see it, they're like, oh, those are just cute. Those are just like, you know, they're trendy. Can wear these to these first festivals in Coachella, and they can, again, they're appropriating these communities of color that if you see them walking down the street, if you see, till this day, I still get looks when I walk down the street with my huaraches. I still get looks, and like, oh, you're so paisa. And like, there's just such negative connotation behind that word. Like, being called paisa, like being, you know, super, I guess in this case it's seen as being super Mexican, And it's like, why wouldn't I be? Why would I should not be? Like, if you're generally very proud of being this nationality, of this ethnic group, like, why shouldn't you be? Like, you're proud of yourself, you have confidence in yourself, like, why is something supposed to look down upon? But because it's racially seen as other, that's the reason why I get looked at like that.
Other times when I wear my huaraches, which I don't have anymore, I've had like white people point at my shoes and yell, "What are those?" And I'm like, oh, who quotes that anymore anyway? But yeah, people make fun of you all the time because you look like an outcast when you're dressed like that to them. And they do become a trend. Like I also mentioned earlier, Etsy shops and a lot of
You see people wearing, like, you know, I saw, where was it, on Twitter, I saw someone was calling out this white woman's business because she was copying native designs of earrings from an indigenous person. She's coming up with indigenous designs from an indigenous woman that makes designs to, you know, pay for, obviously, herself, and it's her business. And she's just copying them, not even giving her any credit. And it's just like, this woman is doing it because she needs to. I'm like, this, like, each of these color schemes, like, everything is in, like, it has intent. It has a story behind it. It has a meaning behind it. And you're just borrowing these any which way because you think they look cute, because they go with your outfit. Like, you don't know the struggle behind it. And that makes me so frustrated. And even then, like, you see it a lot. And there was a time when settlers came and took over indigenous lands, and they're trying to take, like, you know, make all these reservations, and they're taking little children from their homes and from their parents and putting them into white assimilation schools. And they could not have their hair cut long. They could not wear their indigenous clothing or their indigenous jewelry. Like, they will get beaten and they will get punished for it. So now, when they want to reclaim that, and you just take it off of them, you get a profit off of their work, like, no, that's not okay. It's like, you don't know the legacy of pain behind it. You don't know what they had to overcome in order to even be able to wear these beautiful cultural representation of themselves. So for you to just use it because it looks cute, like, check yourself, please. Oh. Yeah, that's whole point of, like, being conscious about everything I wear because of my identities, because I know, and I've had the opportunity to learn about other communities and understand their whole dynamics behind everything, to understand the history, the legacy of oppression and genocide and slavery, and how I can wear some things and I can't wear other things because that's not my struggle. And it's unfortunate people don't know that, they choose to ignore it, and that's the worst part. Because you don't understand the struggle that it is, like, you know, back in the day. So I told you how much to do with the chola, right? So back in the day, there were pachucas, which is like the older version of, you know, cholas today, and they're the pachucos, and zoot suiters, and the fashion back in those days. So when people want to wear, like, the long zoot suits for Halloween, I kind of get mad because it's like, do you understand that people were killed for wearing those beautiful clothing? Because it was like the clothing, their aesthetic was a whole act of, was a protest against, like, I think it was, I want to say it was World War II, and I'm full of if it's not accurate. It was a protest of the war ban on excess use of textiles. So it's like, when people just want to, like, oh, let me just borrow, like, you know, wear this, like, oh yeah, it's so cute. And it's like, you don't know, you don't know, like, people how to go behind it. Like, people that, like, dress that way, they wasn't at a protest. Like, it was letting people know, like, yes, I'm racially other. I'm gonna let you know. I'm gonna let you know I am protesting everything that's going on right now. Like, you're not gonna limit what I can and cannot do, you know? So, yeah, it's just so much history. And it's like, people just wear anything just willy-nilly. I'm just like, what are you doing? Why? Just, yeah, like, there's just, it's representation. Like, everything we wear that we choose to put on our body, like, our body is political, you know, the personal is political. So it's like, everything you use to describe yourself, to wear, to show, like, this is me, this is my aesthetic, like, this all has a meaning behind it. If you don't know, if you don't have intent behind it, then it's kind of nothing.
That's so good.
Again, historically, Mexican people have been seen as lazy, dumb. Which is funny that we're seen as lazy, but also seen as taking American jobs. So, like, what the hell's it gonna be? You can't be both. Yeah, I don't think people understand Mexican culture at all, or Chicanx culture, which is even, to me, a little rougher because it's like, in Mexico, you're not accepted because you're not from Mexico, and in the U.S., you're not accepted because you're not American. I think people think there's a lot of stigmas around being Mexican, and, like, you know, think of, like, the most stereotypical thing about Mexican people that you could think of, and that's what people think it is. But it does definitely change when your clothing changes or your accessories change. I know we have to compensate a lot more, whereas, like, a white person can be mediocre, dress mediocre, and they're gonna be fine and successful, and they're seen as, like, laid back. But if I were to go out in, like, raggedy jeans and a raggedy shirt, I know that people would make a lot of assumptions about who I am, not knowing anything about me. And so, yeah, and I hear this all the time from people at work. Super racist assumptions that if you're a certain race, you have to dress a certain way to be taken seriously, which is a really stupid, like, assumption to make, but it also holds some truth to it, because in practice it happens. Like I have to overcompensate how I dress because of that. People are not going to take me seriously if I'm not, like, showing up to an interview in a ball gown or something, you know? And firsthand, it's happened to me all the time where people are shocked that I'm smart and that I know things because I don't look like I would. And, like, how does somebody look stupid? Or, you know, I mean, like, people look stupid, but that's, like, a different kind of stupid. But I don't know how someone can base these assumptions off of my culture and who I am and my identity. But it happens all the time. So I think, yeah, it is super misunderstood. I think, big picture, though, we're not completely respected, as are a lot of marginalized groups, which is why we're marginalized groups. If we were respected, we wouldn't have a lot of problems that we do today, like institutional racism, systematic, environmental. Our neighborhoods wouldn't be left to fall apart. The cities wouldn't neglect us, like gerrymandering. You know, it's a laundry list of things that wouldn't exist if we were respected. So I think, to an extent, individually, maybe people do respect us, but as a system,
Yeah, accessories are a big part. Gold is a big part that I've incorporated, and I love it. I feel powerful with it. It feels good. I think the reason why it's not, like, heavy in my style is because, like, I'm also, like, gay. Like, the feminine practices of, like, Middle Eastern practice isn't, like, I don't know, it's not really ingrained in me. But I have noticed, like, the masculine practices so gold is for girls, silver is for guys. Like, that's how it is in our culture. I don't like that it's so binary. I've never liked it, but I've always loved gold. Oh my god. I used to like silver more when I was younger. Started liking gold when I was older. And now I just wear gold, like, everywhere. I wear gold necklaces, wear gold rings, I have a gold hoop. And I do wear accessories all the time. But they're, like, simple accessories. Yeah, they're not va-va-voom. Yeah. I'm always wearing this one. And then I'm always wearing these 2 rings.
I definitely feel like the idea as, like, Latina, as a Chicana, as getting away from my quince, which is another, like, huge part of Latinas community, you know, this big celebration where you essentially bring this young woman into, like, womanhood and show her into society. You're like, oh yeah, you don't do this, you never had that. Like, I remember someone was like, oh, the posada, and I was like, what the fuck is a posada? I'm like, I've never been to one. They're like, how do you not know what that is? And I'm like, I don't know. Like, my dad got here back in the freaking 70s. Like, he's 69 years old. He's gonna be 70 next year. Like, this man is extremely Americanized and has done his best in his life to become Americanized and assimilated, or to survive in this area, in the freaking U.S., because he's a dark-skinned brown man. Name the amount of fucking times he's gotten pulled over. Had so many things happen to him just because of the color of his damn skin. So when I say, yeah, I guess I'm pretty whitewashed just because my parents wanted us to fit in. It's because for their own survival they had to be, especially my dad. And from my dad showed that to my mom. My mom had learned that very, very early on, that even as someone that's undocumented, that every single day she was at risk of being deported. Like, she had to do everything she could to make sure that we're okay, that being deported wouldn't happen, that for her own survival, for their own survival, they had to do everything they could to lay as low as possible. I would say, like, a very integral part of being Latina is having, like, this gold jewelry. So when I was 7, my dad gave me this chain, and that same year my mom gave me this pendant on it. It's a heart with flowers. And my dad, when he came here, his dad told him that you need to have something on you that you can exchange for money if something ever happens. So when we were little, he gave this to us as a form of gift. 'Cause, financially, he had the means to, like, hey, I can give something to you, but also here is someone's security blanket for you in case anything ever happens. And on more than one occasion, unfortunately, I had to get this pawned. And my dad asked, like, hey, we are low on rent. Can I pawn your necklace, mija? And so when I got to college, there was a time, it was like maybe probably around my second year, and I was like really, really, really low on rent. Like, I was working, but I had to pay for school, and I paid like $7.22 in rent. It's for a triple. So I got 3 people in my room. I had to share that space with 3 people. It wasn't a big room either. It was like maybe like 400 square feet. Yeah, it sucked, dude. And so I was low on rent, and I had to pay for books that quarter, and I was still a STEM major, so it's like sciences and everything. And unfortunately with that, the university doesn't pay for your access codes. You have to pay to get access to your homework or assignments. I had to pay it. Taking like 3 of those classes at a time, so I had to pay $300 out of pocket. And I did not have money, so I was like, you know what? I don't want to do it. I know I'm gonna get paid soon, but I wouldn't get that until like those are like maybe like $300 that I would need. I didn't get that until like the end of the quarter. So I was like, I need this money now. This is what I got. So I found it, and I avoided going home for like that whole quarter, because I knew my mom would be like, and my dad would be like, where's the necklace we got you? Where is it? And that was like the hardest thing I had to do, because I was like, I want to ask my parents for money, because I know they couldn't. My parents could not afford to send me to school. I lived off of financial aid. I had to eventually get out loans because couldn't pay for it. I used up all of my scholarships that I got, all my grants for undergrad, because 4 years were expensive, unfortunately. And so that was my last resort. And I was only working part-time, so at the end of the quarter, when I finally got that paycheck, I was able to go back to the pawn shop. And then luckily, I am so lucky that he kept them as long as he could. He's like, I wouldn't sell them to anybody. He's like, you're good. And I got it back. I gave him my $300. I got back my necklace, and I was so happy, because I was like, if I had to tell them that I had to pawn that shit, that would break their hearts, and they would be like, why didn't you come to me? But it's like, I know I can't ask you guys for money. Like, you're over here working 2 jobs. My sister's over here trying to make ends meet for her son, trying to help you guys pay rent, when she knows like her RJ's dad isn't gonna pay for any of his child support, not gonna pay for his classes or anything. I'm like, so what is she gonna do? She's gonna work full time. What are you guys gonna do? You're gonna work full time. What's my mom gonna do? Try to sell as much food as she can on the side and not get caught for it. I'm going to school to make a better ends meet so I can help you guys out in the future. Like, I'm not gonna go backwards and ask you guys for help now. So in that part, gold jewelry played a big part, not only in my financial security, but also, like, it's something that's passed down. Like, my dad gave me my mom this pendant when they were dating. And then my sister, he gave my mom another one, a heart with diamonds on it, and she gave that one to my sister, around the same time that I got this one. So this is also that's, like, passed down, that we can pass down too. Like, it's not only as an act of love, from my parents, but it's passing down something that they weren't given, but they know they can provide it for us, and they can give it to us, even if it's either something to hold a memory of them, or it's security that we need someday, So That part gold has been a big part of my life, and I never take this off. Or if someone had a rabbit for me, I'm like, because there's no way in hell I'm taking this thing off. This is everything to me.
Why do you think culturally inspired trends happen in fashion despite the lack of respect for these communities? Shit. That's a good one. When you see something you like, it's easy to take that. Especially with cultures, which we see a lot in fashion, and we've seen historically, like in the Victorian era, how they really loved imported goods, and like a lot of people were getting stuff from China, but they were also putting a ban on Chinese people from traveling to the US. So I think it's always been that aesthetically it works out for them and they like the way it looks. You don't have to think about the people that are attached to it when you're taking wheat or something from them, you know? It's super easy to ignore the deeper meaning behind something when it's a nice throw on your bed or whatever, which is really disappointing. But when it's a tangible object, I think it's a lot easier for people to detach from everything that goes on with that item, because to them it doesn't mean anything.
The process of making kente cloth is really complex, and I can maybe provide a couple points about the creation, and then I encourage everyone to go look at a piece of it and think, wow, this is what it took to make even just a strip you might buy. So kente cloth is, in history, was made of silk. So you have to get the silk, which is a natural product, and you know that entails silkworms and things like that. It can also be made of cotton more commonly. And kente cloth, so you have to spin, let's say you're speaking about cotton. You have to spin the yarn in ancient times. Then you have to prepare a loom. These are not electric machines. And you have to thread the warp, and the weft is, you know, so you have the long strings that will make the base of the cloth, and then you weave through the other strands. This process also involves dyeing those strands to get these great colors of kente cloth. Other key things to know about kente cloth: the weaving traditionally is done by men, and that's a little different for some of, as Westerners, we kind of think of weaving as women's work. And then there's no guidebook for what this pattern should look like. The weavers memorize the patterns, and each kente cloth pattern in history had a name, and there are over 1,000 named patterns, and the weaver would just know that from his memory bank, and just know how to make that pattern. It can be done very quickly by a really proficient weaver, but it could take a long time because the looms make a cloth about 9 inches wide. So if you want, let's say, think of a queen size bedspread. If you want that wide of a kente cloth, you have to make all these strips, and then you have to piece them together. So it's a complex process, but it yields such a variety that you should be paying a lot for a large piece of kente cloth just to affirm the labor that went into it, and the design imagination. Nowadays you would probably be buying a cloth with pre-dyed, probably sort of polyester fibers, but that's okay. You still get, you still got the tradition of the kente cloth behind that contemporary product.
I think socioeconomic status plays a role in these things in terms of oppression. Maybe not so much fashion. Or actually maybe, yeah. When it's a marginalized group of people, they're vulnerable, they're easier to take stuff from. So I think maybe not like blatantly, like I'm gonna steal this from this cultural group because they're low income or something, but I think it's just easier because we don't really have power to do much about it, and socioeconomic status has a lot to do with that, and just in general from holding people back and doing a lot of things. So yeah, I think it's a network of a lot of racist things put together, and they're all working on it. They're all doing it. Yeah, that's something that really needs to just, I wish I could set that straight in everyone's mind. And when you see a Mexican person doing well, or a brown person doing well, or a black person doing well, you don't have to be surprised. Period. Like, that's it. That's really it. You sound racist as hell being like, oh my god, good job, yes. But like, I love praise, but you know, no.
And I would see these videos, and it was a trend for a little while. And it was like that one girl in class, and there was like white girls would like frizz their hair up, put it in a bun, have like a brisk tea and hot Cheetos, and start yelling random shit out loud. Like just start screaming. I was like, that one girl in class, are you talking about a black girl in class? Because I'm pretty sure your hair isn't naturally like that. And it was a TikTok, and a bunch of white people were doing it. Some other races were jumping into it. And I would just scroll past the videos, and it's like, not all black women are like that, you know what I'm saying? Like, there's so many races. Races come in all different shapes and colors. People come in all different shapes and colors, you know? And it's like, sometimes, like, I had asked someone at work, I was playing a game with them, and I was like, what's your middle name and stuff? And we guessed middle names and everything. And he said, what's your middle name? And my middle name starts with the N. And he was like, Naisha? And I was like, like I said, we're not all the same. You know what I'm saying? Don't expect one type of person from a whole community. That's what I'm trying to say. You know what I'm saying? Because like sometimes I try to talk to people who are nothing like me, but in the back of my mind I have a fear like, what if they're prejudiced? What if this person doesn't like who I am? What if they were raised to see black people differently? That's a thought that I always have. Mostly when I'm meeting white people, but also when I'm meeting people of different ethnicities. Because in the back of my head, I'm like, I can go to this person's, because as a child, my mother would tell me, be careful, I don't want you going to this person's house, you never know. Sometimes people don't like our kind. Because I remember when I say like, not all black people are the same, I remember when I got my first job, and the manager, asked me, she was like, I was the only black person there at the time that was hired there. And there was a bunch of people around me, probably like 5 new hires. And the manager asked me, oh yeah, I always want to know, do all black people like fried chicken? And I will never forget that. I looked at that woman like, that woman was 30 years old. And she asked a 17-year-old, do all black people like fried chicken and watermelon? And I remember like, I was like worked at Kohl's, like scooping ice cream as a trial, learning how to do it. And I just remember like having it and being like, in my head like, did she really just ask me, like, this 30-year-old woman just asked me, do all black people really like that? And that was like one of the biggest moments in my life where I thought ignorance comes in all different shapes and sizes, and it comes from everywhere. A manager asked me that, and I would never want to make anyone feel uncomfortable like that. You know what I'm saying? No matter what race they are. We got a new hire in, and he was black as well. And I just remember him coming in and being like, look, it's us. Like, I'm gonna tell you right now, don't let any of them fuck you over. They will ask you stupid questions. They will treat you like shit. It's like, you never really know what people are thinking of you. That's why it's always scary when, like, you're meeting someone typically white, especially when they're older. I'm like, like, in the back of my head, I'm like, having a bad day. Or maybe they're racist. I'm thinking, you know what I'm saying? Because if someone else reacts, they're having a bad day. If I react, I'm ghetto. I'm taken into an office and I'm told I have an attitude problem. Or I need to change my ways because your attitude is way off. I had someone else at work talk about how I'm from Africa. Older white woman, like, you're from Africa. Just random, like, you got your hoop earrings. You know, have you ever heard that question? The bigger the hoop, the bigger the... And I was like... Then they had the audacity to ask me to clean something for her. And I would just remember being like, ask me to clean something for her, and then I didn't clean it. I didn't disrespect her. I didn't say, no, I'm not cleaning it. I just was like, and I didn't clean it. And she went to my leadership and told them. They brought me into the office, and they told me that I had an attitude problem. I'll never forget that. They said I had an attitude problem, and I said, that woman is talking about me being from Africa, talking about my earrings, and she's constantly bringing up very uncomfortable topics for me to talk about with this older white woman. And then she gonna ask me to clean for her and expect me to do it? like, it's already disrespectful what you're saying, and then you gonna ask me to clean for you? Just don't ask me to clean something for you. Okay, I see where this is going. I'm going to walk away. It's fucking crazy. Like, you can appreciate the culture. You can appreciate things as well in the right way. Like, tread lightly. Don't be stupid. Like, you see an influencer turn their comments off because they decided to wear dreads or cornrows. I'm like, address the problem. You already have it on. Turning off the comments isn't gonna want to make anyone understand you. It's gonna make us question you even more. You know what I'm saying? Don't give no phony. Like, when I would see Jeffree Star or Shane Dawson be like, I'm sorry, I did something very ignorant. I put on blackface, and I'm like, okay, like, I'm trying to save your career. Like, I understand that people make mistakes and stuff, but I also wonder when they do those apology videos, are they like behind the camera like fucking black people? They get so fucking mad, they're so fucking sensitive and shit. I'm like, it's really hard to, cause like, it's one thing to make an apology from yourself or because millions of people are telling you to do it. And that's when I'm like, dang, like, it just hurts my heart when I see people like say something stupid or do something stupid that I once liked. And I'm like, dang, like, at one point, like, I wish I could educate you. Like, it just hurts my heart to hear people say that, because now, like, because of my past, I feel uncomfortable being next to you, because part of me questions who you are.
Small businesses, they super profit off of cultural items that don't belong to them, and it's nice for other people to put that on because they like how it looks, and they're not thinking about how you got ridiculed in elementary school for wearing so-and-so to school, but they look good in it, so they don't really give a shit. And another thing is, like, hair. Like, black women are constantly demonized for their hair. And then white people get dreads. When Zendaya is being talked trash about, I don't even remember who it was, on some, like pop culture news or whatever, and they were, like, saying how she smelled like patchouli and some other stuff, but Miley Cyrus gets dreads and she's trendy. You know, it's those double standards like that they're super real, and this is why it's really important not to appropriate people's cultures, because it's so insensitive to not think about how much they've gone through historically, and persecution of tons of cultures, and colonization has done their best to wipe these things out, and people have actually been killed for being indigenous and visibly indigenous, and it's not okay just to take it again from them and put it on while you were also probably making fun of the same people while you were growing up because they looked weird and they didn't shop at Hollister or whatever. It's super important to talk about this, like, super important, because it's not just about clothing, it's about the constant and long-term effects of racism and what they've been doing to communities like people of color. And I think a lot of people aren't comfortable with being told that they can't wear certain things, but I think they need to feel uncomfortable, and I think feeling uncomfortable is necessary to then start thinking about it and maybe be like, oh yeah, maybe that's a good point, but, you know, maybe not everybody will think that way, but I mean, I know not everyone will take criticism well. You need to make people aware, and I think that's just important in general, because it's not okay to not care about people's feelings, and it's not okay to act like racism isn't still alive and well in discrete ways like cultural appropriation.
Hair is always political, I think, and if we switch to American history, like in the 1960s, if men had long hair, they might be called long-haired hippies. If a man had a crew cut, he was upstanding and supported the president, let's say President Nixon. And all these judgments were made based upon the hairstyle. And today, when I hear an example that people in a certain work environment can't have cornrows or dreadlocks, I think that, again, the fear of the hairstyle is back, and it's a violation of a person's civil rights, I would say, at least in like a modern context, to be told you can't have a certain hairstyle. What does it tell us about what someone is trying to suppress? And that would be your identity through your telling you what kind of hairstyle you need to have. And I think that is a continuation of going back to the example of the Pende and the Belgians and then the Christian missionaries. It's the same kind of motivation for wanting to tell people, you may not wear that hairstyle at this time.
Okay, I'm like, I got all these, white kids trying to think that they're better than me, like think they have this money. I'm like, what am I gonna do to make myself feel better? So as a result, I started putting on my hoops a lot more. Like my big gold hoops too, like the ones that you could see, like it's just big. You put my whole wrist in it as a bangle, okay? Like, this is me, like this is my culture, like this is part of my aesthetic, like this is where I come from, like, cause my sister was a chola back in the day, all right? So this is her, so by default this is me too. I'm like, let me show you, like this is my armor. Like, I am a brown girl sitting in a room of 400 students in this physics class. You might be one of the few, but you're gonna see me and you're gonna know that I'm here. Like, you are not the only ones that get to be in this space. So for me, a lot of wearing signifiers of my Latinidad, like for me it was the hoop earrings and my red lipstick a lot. Because the red lipstick is just, it's being vibrant. It's that power getting back for myself, that I was able, like, you know what, like, I'm gonna rock like Selena and call it a fucking day. Like, for me that was my armor. That was like, this is my word paint, like let's go to work, let's go to school, like this is gonna get me through the day. Like, I might want to be in this space, but I can make it because I have these things to help me. I have these things that remind me of home, of my friends, of my sister, and my family. And so for me, like, showing up on a thing like that, and then even now, like, I still wear, like, especially this, I love Selena. Like, I love her. Like, she's one of my freaking icons, one of my idols. Being a Mexican American living in the U.S. and not knowing Spanish, like that. God, when I saw her for the first time, when I saw the movie, first of all, I used to think that J-Lo was Selena, which, looking back at it, I'm like, who was I? But now I'm like, dang, I'm like, that was the first time I saw myself in media. And even now, like, I think for me, like, all these signifiers are like than the clothing that I wear, whether it's wearing Selena pieces or like quotes from people that I follow, or if it's the hoop earrings, or if it is the my long nails. My long nails is a very hood aesthetic. It's a very something it's this extraness, right? That's you typically only see in communities of color, because to us it's like, you know what, like, shit, if I'm gonna be broke, I'm gonna look good at least. Like, you're gonna see me, you're gonna hear me talking. This is something that gives me power, that gives me, like, alright, like, I'm feeling better, I am here, I'm taking up space, and you're gonna see, you're gonna hear me talking with my nails and being loud, you're gonna feel my presence. But like, how can you do anything with those? And I'm like, I've been wearing them since I was 14. Like, I can do a lot of things with these acrylics. One of them will flip you off, so just try me. It's hard to find like these little pieces of Latinidad in like mainstream clothing, but like, unfortunately now, since a lot of big fashion brands have like seen like, oh, like the hood aesthetic, the poor aesthetic is like really popular now, like they're adopting it a lot, which makes it more accessible. Instead of being like, prescribed to like little things. In the swap meet, it was like a Selena shirt, and it was airbrushed. And I was like, I want that. And like, my mom was being like, no, Mija, you can't wear that graffiti thing to school. Like, your school will not let you. I found a Selena t-shirt at Ross, bro. It was in the men's section. And I still bought it though, because it said anything for Selena's. And I was like, this is the content I need. And like, this is what I want. Like, I want to like wear things that I love. Like, I love, Selena. I love that music. I love favorite patterns. I'm like, I love seeing these little signifiers of my culture that I can relate to, right? Because my culture isn't just Mexican culture. It is chicanidad. It's the duality of the both. It is being in, like, not being Mexican enough for like my Mexican family, because you was born, right? So they see us differently. They see us as, we will not have that same love for our nation. I don't have that same Mexican nationalism as my cousins do, because I wasn't born there. I don't, that's not my patria. That's, unfortunately, my patria is the U.S. But even then, I am not enthusiastic about it because of the legacy of genocide and racism and slavery that we have here, where it's like, I don't want to be proud of being from this area. Like,
it shouldn't be surprising when we're smart. A big stereotype is that, like, Mexican people don't want to be smart, or, like, you know, we just want to do labor jobs or whatever, or people are surprised when we do good in school, and that stigma needs to die completely. Race is a social construct anyway, and I think its ramifications are really real, and stereotypes, even if they're fake, have incredibly real effects on people, and that's one of them. It just bothers me that people see me and are surprised that I go to school, or they're really proud of me that I'm doing this, and they're just like, yes, like, I can't believe you're putting yourself through all of this. You're so brave, and, like, you know, and although there is something to be proud of in being, like, a first generation, like, Chicana student, because historically we have not really been allowed education or have steered away from it for a lot of different reasons.
I think the question of educating oneself about fashion is a great question. Fashion, in my opinion, is the fastest moving, right? I mean, it changes constantly. The world of fashion moves so quickly. On the other hand, that's no excuse for just simply bringing in anything and not knowing, for example, that you're wearing a mud cloth. You have a mud cloth book bag this semester because you found it at Target and looked cool. But mud cloth has this really long history. But then how would you educate yourself? And I think that's where manufacturers could have some pretty creative answers to that question, even providing the names of the artists, you know, when you purchase the product, or even links to understand more about, hey, you liked this mud cloth design on your book bag, and this is what mud cloth is. And I think that's pretty easy for them to do nowadays with internet. And that would be a great way toward education. But ultimately, are we doing ourselves a disservice? Probably. But are we going to keep just buying things because we like the way they look? Probably. Right? So I'm just trying to, I guess I'm trying to be realistic. What are those codes, you know, those codes you could scan with your phone, and maybe you could hear an interview with the artist. I think that for designers, presenting ways for quick education on the branding and labeling would be a fantastic challenge.
It's never just that. So when we say it's just, something's never just anything. It's not just, it's just hoops, it's just looks cute. It's not. A majority of the fashions that we have today is all rooted in, it's all from Black people. Like, the Black community are trendsetters. Like, that's just how it is, period. Like, hood aesthetics, when you get down to it, it's from lower income brown and Black people. So it's never just down to it, because when people of color wear these things in places of power, so when you see someone like Gabrielle Union getting fired off of NBC because of her Black hairstyles, it's never just a joke. It's never just a hairstyle. There's a tepahe. It is power. It is oppression. So maybe to some people it's us being sensitive, and it's like, no, it's not us being sensitive. It's us standing for what is right. It's taking back the power that's taken away from us. To them, it's just nothing. To us, it's just your white privilege showing. So.
Josephine, do you like cultural appropriation? Yeah, me neither. Toodaloo. Say bye. Meow, bye.